welcome to my next Patreon lesson. So today we're going to be working with canvas and alcohol inks. So if you haven't already, make sure that you watch the prepping your canvas video so that you are ready and prepared for this lesson. If you try to create with the alcohol inks without prepping your canvas first, you're going to get a lot of absorption and your inks are not going to flow the way you want. They're just going to kind of fall into the canvas and then you have kind of this dark, muddy mess. So what priming the canvas does, and I apologize if you've already heard this in the first video, but is it helps the canvas become less porous, meaning that the alcohol inks cannot absorb into the canvas as easily. Now with canvas, no matter what, no matter how many coats of the Kilz 2 that you put on the canvas, you're still going to get a little bit of absorption because it's a naturally porous surface. So you're not going to get the same workability with the inks with the canvas that you get with the Yupo paper. The Yupo paper is much easier, in my opinion, to work with than the canvas. Canvas took me several more months to master than the Yupo paper, simply because I had to figure out how to prevent the inks from absorbing and how to keep the inks moving around. So what I'll do real quickly is just show you what the primer is that I use, but I really recommend that if you're watching this video, you watch the priming video first, rather than just trying to jump right into it. This here is the Kilz 2 latex primer and sealer. I had someone ask me why she couldn't find this clear sealer in the department store, but it's not a clear sealer. It's actually, as you can tell from the sides of the can, it's a white primer, so you're looking for this. And the easiest thing to do is just to screenshot this screen or Google Kilz 2 and take a picture of this can to your department store or hardware store, wherever it is that you're getting it, and they will find it for you, okay? This is the only primer that I recommend. So the first thing with working with alcohol inks, I don't waste money on blending solution for the canvas. So the blending solution is from Tim Holtz and it looks like this. And they cost about $4 to $5 for every 2 ounces, which is pretty expensive. I really find that working with the blending solution is necessary on the Yupo paper. I don't think it's necessary when working on the canvas. You've already probably watched the working with inks on Yupo paper video, and in that video I used the alcohol rather than the blending solution. 1, because I didn't have any of this at the time. I had run out and was waiting on a shipment. And 2, if all you have is the alcohol and Yupo paper, you can still use it on Yupo paper. I just prefer the effect of the alcohol blending solution on the Yupo paper. And I don't think it's necessary for the canvas because I don't think you're going to even notice the difference at all between the blending solution and the alcohol. So I have my 91% isopropyl alcohol, and I have my fine tip squeeze bottle and then my super fine tip squeeze bottle, and both of these are filled with alcohol. I'm just going to refill this one here. And so if you don't have the fine tip squeeze bottles, it's kind of tough because you want to be able to control the amount of alcohol that comes out of your container. So you will find that the inks are much easier to work with when you have a more controlled flow of your alcohol. Okay, so just going to grab one more thing here. All right, so now I'm going to get started. So the inks, the colors that I chose to work with today are 3 of my favorites as usual. So I have the Tim Holtz Alcohol Ink Turquoise. I have the Tim Holtz Alcohol Ink Botanical. And I have the Copic Refill Amethyst. So I have a purple, a green, and a blue. So for the purposes of this video, it might be easier for you to work with the similar colors, so you're getting a similar blend, but it's okay if you want to work with any colors you want. That's absolutely fine. If you have a hard time figuring out what colors mix with what, you can find color wheels or color blending wheels at most local art stores, and they can help you with what colors blend best together and how to work with the blending of colors. So as far as my air source goes, I'm going to be using my Baby Bliss Travel Blow Dryer. Again, I do use an airbrush at this point, but for that will be for the more advanced videos. For this, I only use the Travel Blow Dryer, my lungs, and the occasional straw. So I have to add a safety disclaimer. You should not be inhaling alcohol. It's not healthy. So I do recommend wearing a ventilation mask. You can find these at Home Depot and any hardware store. And I do recommend this because you will get lightheaded if you spend too much time inhaling the alcohol inks. And I would never want anyone to get hurt. So that's that. And of course, I have a whole selection of paintbrushes here in the corner. And I might talk a little bit more about how I'll use those later. All right, so first things first, I'm going to try my best to keep my head out of the video. I know in my previous videos, you guys got some pretty awesome shots at the back of my head. So I'm going to try to keep my head out of the shot, but it's going to be tough, especially if I'm using my lungs to move around the inks. So this canvas is, also I should mention, is a 9x12 canvas. So it's a good size. It's to kind of like your typical paper size. It is a it is a back stapled canvas or stretched canvas. It's a little bit higher end than just your traditional black back stapled canvas, but I just picked a canvas that was on sale. You can use, as far as I have been able to tell, any kind of canvas you want. They do specifically make watercolor canvases, and they, as well as the mixed media canvas, so it may help to use the mixed media canvas, but I still recommend priming your canvas with the Kilz 2 no matter what canvas you use, okay? And so usually you don't start working with your canvas until you've let your primer dry for 24 hours. If you start working with your inks after priming a little too soon, you may actually pick up some of the primer into your piece and you end up with these chunks and you will not be happy. So I really recommend giving your painting a whole day to dry, or your primer, excuse me, a whole day to dry. If you want to do 12 hours instead of a whole day, you know, you prime it in the morning and then you come back to it at night, I think you should be okay. But I really want to recommend patience, okay? So how we work with the inks on the canvas is very similar to how you work with the inks on the Yupo paper. I think the main difference is that you don't have as much time to work with the inks, meaning the inks dry up and absorb much faster on the canvas. So you might have noticed with the Yupo paper, I wasn't really in a rush to blow around the colors. I could let them sit for a little bit longer. I could kind of let them do what they wanted to do. Where with the canvas, you kind of have to work with them the entire time. You can let them sit for just a moment at certain points, but you don't want to let them sit too much because you're just going to get these really absorbed dark spots on your piece. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a little bit of my wider tip alcohol bottle, and I'm going to figure out where I'm going to start. So for this piece, I am going to leave some white space. In the last piece that we did, we covered the entire sheet of Yupo paper. Here, I think I'm going to leave white space on either corner. So I'm going to try to get my piece to kind of go in this direction, okay? And so I always start with canvas, unless I'm working on a geode piece or a mineral inspired piece, but we can talk about that later. But almost 99% of the time I start by putting down the alcohol onto the canvas first. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm just going to get a little bit of that alcohol on there, but enough that I can really mix it around. And then I'm going to take my ink and I'm going to do one, two, a couple more came out than I wanted to, and I'm just going to go right ahead and give it a blow. Okay, right ahead. And I'm just going to work with the ink almost the entire time it's drying, okay? And so I'm just moving the ink around, staying with the spots that are the most wet, and also trying to prevent your edges from getting too saturated. So I'll move the inks around from the edges into the middle. So I'm kind of going around and in here. And again, you're gonna get to know how the inks work and how to work with them as you practice. All right, so I'm gonna really let this blow dryer dry these almost completely into the canvas. So if you touch it here, you've got no blue. completely dry, okay? And so you can see here on the canvas, it's a much more structured look than the Yupo paper can sometimes be. So I'm just going to kind of, again, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some alcohol. And this time I'm going to add a little bit of the purple. And I'm not going to add any more than 1 to 2 drops of each color. And I gave, oops, sorry for the head, a little bit of blow there. And now, again, I'm going to use my travel blow dryer to move around the ink, move around the alcohol. And just really allowing the inks to move around, to spread around. I'm trying to prevent them from getting really clumped or getting really saturated in any one area. Okay. And so now I'm going to go in with some more here on the sides. I'm going to go in with my green. And so at any point after watching your videos, you can leave a comment in the community section. You can leave a comment on this actual video, or you can leave a comment or a question on the private Facebook page. So if you haven't already, please go like Jessica Young Intuitive Art on Facebook. And then once you've liked me on Facebook, I will, can you send me a message, please, letting me know you signed up for my Patreon, and then I will invite you to the private Facebook group. Okay, so again, now I've got this kind of flowy, but still a little bit of structured look going on. So because I have only so much white space here, I'm going to move to my super fine tip and just do a small spray, a small line here, and I'm going to tie in the green over here. And so sometimes I drop the ink right on, and sometimes I might draw the ink in a line. It kind of depends really on what effects and how much space I'm trying to fill and what the shape of the space that I'm trying to fill is. And so I'm already noticing that I don't really like the way that the green and the purple is mixing together. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious on how much purple and green I allow to touch one another. And so I have some white space here, and I'm going to just go in. And again, this isn't planned. I just kind of check out the way it looks, and I just kind of decide intuitively where I want to go next. And it's stressful for individuals who really like control and who really like to have control over their paintings and over their work. So if you like control and you like being able to know exactly where your piece is headed, I don't recommend alcohol inks to you. I don't. So if you don't like how structured this looks, you can kind of go in and just add some spots of alcohol here to add some texture. So I'm not adding any ink. I'm just kind of going over some of the spots that are already dry with some alcohol, and it's giving me a little bit more texture. And I'm seeing how the purple is really dark here, but it's kind of light here. So I'm going to actually just add a little bit more purple here. And again, I'm just going to use my travel blow dryer to just kind of move around the ink. And so, like I said in my Yupo paper video, you can use the parts that you don't like to guide where you go next. So that is kind of one of my secret pro tips, is that your mistakes are actually excellent indicators of the next step in your journey. And I think that's true for life, right? So wherever your mistake is, or wherever there is a part that you don't really like, you just go in and you rework it, right? You rework it. And so I'm going in with my super fine tip again into these little spots, and I'm just gonna kind of add some blue to the outside, and I'm gonna kind of blow it from the outside in. And just gonna getting the colors to work with one another. All right, and so I'm gonna do the same thing up here in this little spot. I'm gonna add a little bit of alcohol. And I'm gonna add a little bit of blue to the outside, maybe one more, and then I'm gonna blow it from the outside in. And so the inks are really good at avoiding other colors. They kind of, if you notice, I can kind of guide them based off where there's no other ink. They kind of work around each other. They might blend in just a little bit, but for the most part, they do really well at just kind of working around one another. All right, so now I'm gonna go in and tie in a little more of this blue. And again, how much alcohol you put down really depends on what look you're going for. If you want a really flowy, whimsical, soft look, you're going to want more alcohol. If you want a super saturated look, if you want it to be really bold and really vibrant, then you're going to want less alcohol and more ink. But if you add too much, if you put too much ink into your alcohol, excuse me, you'll notice that the inks won't mix as well because they really need a certain amount of blending solution or alcohol to get them to flow the way you really want them to. And again, I'm just kind of using spots that I don't really like to kind of guide where I'm applying inks or where I'm applying alcohol next. Okay, so I'm gonna come back in over here with some, we're gonna do some green. And again, I don't really ever add more than 2 to 3 drops of ink at a time for a piece like this size. And so you can kind of see here, right where I put the ink down, there's some darker spots, and that's the risk you run. So I'm lucky enough that it's not so dry that I can make those spots disappear. But if you leave the ink sitting on the canvas for too long, those spots will become permanent. And it's much harder to blend in those solid, permanent, solid line circles, excuse me, than it is when they're still kind of wet and you can move them around with the blow dryer. Okay, so I'm digging the way this is looking so far. I got a couple things I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm going to keep going with it. And so I'm going to go in here, and I already know I want to add some more purple. And I already know that that was too much purple, so I'm just going to go over it again with a little bit of alcohol and push it around. And you can kind of see with this blob here that when you add too much ink and not enough alcohol or not enough blending solution, you get this muddy. So I have this kind of muddy part here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go in and add a little bit more alcohol. I'm going to actually let that alcohol sit for a second so it picks up the ink. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to push that alcohol right over that too dark spot. And I'm going to push as much as I can out onto white space so that we kind of lighten up, but you can still see how it's like this muddy purple color. And so that's what we want to avoid. So the way that I'm going to fix this, so with Yupo paper, the beauty is that you can just go in and wipe away what you don't like. With canvas, it's not quite as easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to forget about that spot right here that I don't like, and when I come back in with my gold, I'm going to use that spot to guide where I start my gold, okay? So far I like most of everything else except for this spot here. So I'm going to continue to fill in my piece. I'm going to add some blue in here. And again, I do let my blow dryer stay over this till it's mostly dry. All right, and so now I'm just kind of figuring out where I kind of want my final steps to go. So I think I want that to darken up a little bit for the blue here. So I'm just gonna go in and add a little bit more blue and a little bit more alcohol. So we get a little bit of a denser blue here. And it's really, again, just about working with the inks as much as you can until they dry. Okay. And so if you don't have the travel blow dryer, you can use a straw and kind of blow around until it's dry, or you can use your lungs, which again, I don't really recommend. In your lungs, you're not going to be able to get as structured of a piece. But what I will do for you guys as a little bonus is I'm going to add a short video after this one. And it's going to be me doing the alcohol ink on canvas with no tools. So no blow dryer and no airbrush, only my lungs and only the ink. So I will add that as a freebie video for everyone who purchased this tier, okay? So I'm not done yet though. I'm going to kind of go in and I'm going to add a little bit of purple here because I don't like the purple mixed with the green, but I don't mind the purple mixed so much with the blue. And go in here with my blow dryer. And tie in a little more blue here. And depending on how hot your blow dryer is, you may not want to get as close. I'm really close to the canvas because this blow dryer is not very hot. It's a very low heat blow dryer, which is nice. If you have a blow dryer that has a lot of heat or a high heat, I don't recommend necessarily doing getting so close, excuse me. I don't necessarily, if you have a really high heat blow dryer, I actually don't really recommend using a blow dryer for your alcohol ink art. If it's that strong, you're going to end up unhappy more than you're going to end up happy with your results that way. So just be mindful of that. All right, now I'm just going in and kind of filling in spots that either look like they're bare or like they need something, or I'm softening up a couple edges. And so sometimes I'll soften my edges by leaving a really fine line of ink on the edge of the line, and then I kind of feather out my edges here. So I do that by pushing the alcohol towards the edge and away from the edge, towards the edge and away from the edge. And it kind of gives me this more airy kind of edge. Same with this blue here, and I'm going to do the same with this purple here. Excuse my head. Sorry about my head there. So I'm just pushing the ink towards the edge so it picks up a little bit more, and I'm pushing it away from the edge. Okay, so now we've got this kind of nice airy look going on here, and so I'm going to do the same thing for here. Just going to kind of give it the opportunity. All right, go through with my blow dryer and All right, so that is kind of the end result of the color. What I'm gonna go do now is I'm gonna come back in with my gold. So, like I said before, I'm gonna use the parts of my piece that I don't like to guide where I'm going with my alcohol. I'm sorry, where I'm going with my gold. So I am going to saturate this area a little bit because that's that muddy area that I didn't really like. And then I'm gonna balance that out by adding, so what this is a little pipette. And I am going in, I have my big alcohol ink bottle, and I'm going in and I'm picking up some ink, and then I'm actually taking the ink and I'm pushing it back out into the jar, and then when I'm just kind of getting air spats out of it, and then I take those air spats and I push them out over my piece. And I really like that natural kind of splatter effect that you get. All right. And so I really like how that looks. And the last thing that I'm going to do is, so this is from Tim Holtz. It is a splatter brush. So these are plastic bristles. And so what I will do, if I want to add just a little bit of a splatter or some sort of kind of texture to my piece, is I'll very lightly dip in just the edges of the bristles. Make sure I tap them off so they're not dripping. And then I take this over my piece and I just kind of mess with the plastic bristles, and I just let a little bit of that ink splatter onto my canvas, and then I kind of get this, as you can see, I'm getting this nice little drippy texture that comes in, and I think I am satisfied with our piece. And so if your piece doesn't look like this, that is okay. This is your first time, guys. This is the first time trying this. So remember, I have been doing this for many, many, many months, and I've been teaching myself for quite a while. So it may look like it's easy, but it's not. And you can see that after taking these tutorials, unless you're super artistically inclined and you just pick up things really easily, this isn't the easiest thing in the world. So I just want to encourage you guys to not give up, to keep trying. No matter what, you will eventually get it, but the only way to not get it is to give up and not try again, right? So this piece to me isn't even the most beautiful. There's so many things about this piece that I would fix or change, and you may be looking at it thinking, oh, it's perfect, or it's flawless. So just remember too that your eyes see something different than other people's eyes. What you hate, someone else might love, and what someone else might love, you might hate, and that's okay, right? This isn't personal. Art isn't meant to be, you're not supposed to take it personal if someone doesn't like your art. It's a critique, it's an evaluation and a perspective, and if someone doesn't like it, it kind of gives you a different perspective and maybe some ideas of where you could go next or what you could try differently next time if you want to, right? So what I basically do now is I let this sit. I would let this sit for about an hour, maybe 2, because even though this is dry, the gold does take a little bit longer to dry. So I'm going to let this wait about an hour. And then the next step would be priming my canvas. And there is a there is a sealing your work. So that means that I'm going to go over this with 1 coat of Krylon Kamar varnish, and then 1 coat of UV protection varnish, and then another coat of the Kamar varnish. So if you want to remind yourself, or you want to learn how to seal and protect your artwork on canvas and also on Yupo paper, there is a video for that in this bundle. So make sure you just follow up with that. And I just would suggest waiting about an hour before you apply any varnish to the outside of this. The other option also for this is to add resin. I don't particularly like how resin works on canvas. I prefer using resin with Yupo, but we will have an advanced video on working with resin later on. The other thing I wanted to mention is edges. So you may have noticed that I didn't protect my edges. So I have come across a bunch of different opinions over whether people like the drippy edges or whether people like the clean edges. And what I tend to find is it kind of depends on what the drips look like. If the drips look like this, where they're really pretty and they kind of match with the piece, I'll leave them. If they're really ucky and muddy and you've been kind of overworking the edges and things like that, then I'm going to go through and I'm going to repaint my edges. This piece, I think I'm going to paint my edges gold as something a little bit different. And I actually use, to paint the edges gold for a canvas, I actually just use the gold alcohol ink. Or I might use a gold leaf. But other times I may just paint the edges white. And so what I'll actually do is I'll just paint over these with Kilz, that same Kilz varnish, or I'm sorry, primer that I used to prep the canvas. I'll go over the edges with that very easily. I found that taping the edges with painter's tape doesn't really do anything. It seems like the inks evade the tape and get through here to the sides anyways, so I find it's a waste of time. And just make sure that if you're commissioning a piece or if someone's having you do a piece for them, you ask them about the edges, because most people who aren't art savvy aren't even going to think about the edges, okay? And I will have some more advanced videos on doing your edges, on using gold leaf and things like that. But for now, this is our video on working with alcohol ink on canvas. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment on the video, to comment in the community section, or to leave a comment or a message on the Facebook page. And again, if you haven't yet, please like Jessica Young Intuitive Art on Facebook. And once you've done that, send me a message letting me know you're a patron, and then I will be able to send you the invite to the private Facebook group. Right now, we only have a couple of people on the Facebook group out of the 23 people taking the class. So once I get at least 5 or 10 people on the group, then I will start the private Facebook Live Q&As and things like that. So happy arting, and I'm so happy you joined me. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.